A knock struck the door. Coyote startled so sharply that the rag slipped from her hand. For one suspended second, she only stared toward the sound. She exhaled through her nose, annoyed by the reaction before she could quite steady herself. Jesus Christ, she thought. Get a grip. She'd been absent-minded all day. There was no other way to describe it, as she moved through the den, wiping down surfaces already clean, rearranging, checking the small stage twice and then checking it again. It was not that she had run out of things to do. More so, it was that her hands needed something to obey while the rest of her remained unsettled by something nesting deep within her. Temo, Ojin, and Hector. They were missing, and she had no clue why.
Coming!
She called, already stepping out from behind the bar. She kept raking her brain for explanations. She crossed towards the stairs, glancing once towards the stage as though one of them might have appeared there in the few seconds since she had last checked. Nothing. Temo and Ojin, she could explain, although it was still odd. Temo had been off and jittery all day, carrying himself like someone listening to something no one else could hear. Ojin had followed him around with that same infuriating quiet certainty he brought to everything. Fine, whatever. People took walks, people got moody, and just as commonly, people with unresolved tension and shared talent for acting weird and shifty disappeared together sometimes. It was annoying, sure, but survivable. The second knock came as she reached the stairs. Coyote slowed, one hand settling on the rail.
Yeah, I heard you,
she called, a little sharper than she meant to. The irritation helped, barely. Temo and Ojin were strange, but they were familiar. Hector was not. Or, sorry, Coyote, as the eccentric liked to be referred to. The guy had literally introduced himself with the name of a god, and absurd to not even begin to describe him. Worse than that, everyone was acting as if this was normal. Where was he anyway? That was harder to explain. So was the way Temo had looked at him. So was the way Ojin had gone quiet around him. So was the strange pressure in the room whenever Hector smiled. Like everyone else had heard a joke Coyote had not been told. Her gut tightened. Of course, her brain had already started filling in the blanks. Badly, stupidly. With the kind of explanations people invented when friends started lying by omission. When money and secrecy and nervous glances all sat too close together. But even that did not feel right. Whatever this was, it was weirder. She hated that the thought came to her so clearly. The third knock came when she was nearly at the door. The den seemed suddenly too quiet behind her. The bar empty, the unlit stage, the bottles glowing faintly purple beneath the neon. All of it holding still, as if the room itself had paused to see what would happen next. By the time she crossed the room, she had already begun explaining the feeling away. Long day, stress, hunger, the weirdness with Temo, nothing more. She opened the door to a sharp-dressed man in fancy leather shoes, with a neatly groomed beard and a velvet vest that screamed old money. The gentleman was older, with the kind of composed bearing that made age feel cultivated. Good evening. His voice was smooth, and his tone was slightly amused, as if he had already anticipated whatever answer she might give. And there it was again, that feeling, not fear. Something she registered in a more primal way. A quiet recoil in the body before thought had anything useful to say about it. The primitive certainty that something was wrong, though she reasoned it away almost instantly with shame for having a bad feeling about it all. Am I interrupting?
No, not yet.
I got a small smile from him. I saw the poster outside, he said, gesturing lightly towards the window. I was hoping you could tell me a bit about the show.
Band starts at 8. Tomorrow. We're closing for the night now, as we're understaffed. I'm sorry.
Tomorrow, he repeated. Then he glanced beside him. Perfect. Only then did she register the younger man standing just off his shoulder. He was stylish and youthful. The kind of guy who'd clearly spent time in nightlife scenes, warehouse parties, and places where people talked about atmosphere and vibes like it was a religion. He had that alert, eager look of someone treating the city like a series of possible revelations. And behind him, farther down the street, Yaretsi noticed someone else. At first it was only a shape. A woman, maybe? Standing beyond the reach of the neon where the violet light dissolved into the darker wash of the city. She was still enough to seem accidental, like a shadow caught on the sidewalk. Yaretsi could not make out her face. Only the suggestion of dark clothing, a pale angle of throat, one hand resting at her side with unnatural calm. The woman did not move, and Yaretsi's stomach tightened. But immediately after that, she doubted herself. This feeling was based on what, exactly? She had spent too much of her life being looked at like she was the problem before she had opened her mouth. The last thing she wanted was to become the kind of person who decided that someone was wrong because her nerves twitched at the sight of them. The younger man stepped forward, just enough to soften the tension.
May I?
He asked, with a reverence you wouldn't expect from his looks. The older man nodded ever so slightly.
Hi, I'm Charles. Pleased to meet you. Oh, I just have to say this place looks amazing. Well, what I can see anyways. This has got to be an old door. I love old doors. I'm a huge fan of a strong entrance. Anyway, my friend here is not very in touch with the youth. And I just keep telling him, we need to hit the town, experience the local nightlife. You can't understand a city from a hotel balcony. You know, you have to go where the floor is sticky and where someone's amp is probably doing something illegal with the electricity.
Yaretsi blinked. Charles pointed toward the poster.
And then we saw it. Free mezcal, and I thought, well, that's it! The divine intervention! There is absolutely no way we're gonna miss something called free mezcal, especially after it's been hyped up like this.
It's the band name?
Oh, I figured! But eventually.
Charles tapped his temple.
But for one beautiful second, I thought this was a much more generous establishment.
Against her will, Yaretsi laughed a little. The feeling in her stomach remained, but now it had to push through the humiliating possibility that she was simply being hostile because the stranger had weird vibes. He just seemed lost now.
You're a day early.
Tragically, yes.
He put a hand to his chest.
I completely blew the timing, but now I'm kind of glad I did, because otherwise we wouldn't have gotten a chance to ask so nicely. I had a feeling tomorrow was going to be packed. Mm-hmm.
The way he said it landed with masked enthusiasm, like the kind of person who loved being early to something before the rest of the city caught on.
Well, if you're serious about coming tomorrow, you can just, show up with a ticket like everybody else,
she said, shifting back toward the small reception stand by the door.
Yes, absolutely. Tickets. I love tickets. Big believer in tickets. Paper, digital, stamp, wristband, whatever system we're respecting here. We just wanted to make sure there was space for us.
Well, not unless you got a ticket.
Right, of course, but say some people, respectful people very eager to support local music, were standing outside a closed bar asking very politely whether there might be a list or...
Yaretsi's eyes shifted past him. The woman was much closer now. Not by much. Just enough that Yaretsi noticed. One moment she'd been near the edge of the violet spill from the sign. Now she stood just inside it, the neon grazing the side of her face without revealing enough. Yaretsi had not seen her walk. Her stomach tightened again. The woman stepped out of the dark, her heels announcing her loudly. Her posture carried a power that forced Charles silent. Her eyes settled on Yaretsi.
I am an old friend of Wewe Coyote.
Yaretsi blinked.
You know Hector?
The woman's mouth curved faintly.
I've known him by many names.
For a second, Yaretsi did not know what to say. She looked at the three of them. The older man, composed and unreadable. Charles, suddenly quiet. And this woman, standing in front of her like she had stepped out of some other life Hector never bothered to explain. What kind of life had he led exactly, that people like this could show up at the door asking for him?
Hector isn't here.
Yaretsi said.
I can see that.
He didn't mention anyone was coming.
No. He rarely does what is expected of him.
There was no anger in it. Not exactly. Just familiarity. The kind that made Yaretsi feel absurdly embarrassed on his behalf. And this feeling made her feel underprepared. So she reached for the guest ledger, because it was the only thing in the room that made sense.
Name?
Charles.
She wrote it down. Then she looked up at the older man. Lorenzo. She added that too. The ink drying black on the page beneath the low violet spill of the neon coyote sign. Then she looked at the woman.
And you?
Carlotta.
Yaretsi added the name beneath the others. Charles leaned slightly to glance at the page and smiled.
Amazing. You made it official.
Don't make me regret it.
I would never.
Yaretsi shut the ledger.
Then, yeah, I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Carlotta said nothing, but her gaze stayed on Yaretsi for a moment longer than was comfortable. They stepped back from the door. Charles gave her a little salute.
Good luck with whatever it is you're doing here. Later.
Thanks. I'm gonna need it.
They turned and folded back into the city. Yaretsi remained there for a second longer than necessary, one hand still resting on the edge of the door, watching them disappear into the dark. The feeling of unease returned. It was almost worse now that she was alone, because now it had to live beside the fact they had been personable, funny even. She shut the door.
Get over yourself.
She muttered. The imbalance had not eased. It had, however, settled deeper, somewhere harder to name. And although she would not admit it yet, something in her had wanted to bolt the door the moment she opened it. She was right to trust that. She just didn't know it yet. Chapultepec. Demo did not remember deciding to leave. Later, if he tried to reconstruct the path that had brought him here, memory would refuse him the smallest mechanics of it. Whether he had locked the door behind him, or whether he had paused before stepping into the street and considered, even for a second, where he was going. Those details belonged to a world that still obeyed reason. He only knew that after waking, with Weiwei Coyote's voice still lodged somewhere deep in his ribs, one thought had taken hold of him with the force of instinct. Chapultepec. He had to go back there. He needed confirmation. He dragged his bicycle out into the street and mounted it with hands that felt colder than the handlebars. Mexico City did not slow itself for private revelation. It carried on in all directions at once, indifferent and alive. Traffic surged through the avenues with its usual impatience. Vendors called out over one another and voices made hoarse by repetition. The smell of roasted corn, fryer oil, damp stone, and exhaust gathered heavily in the late afternoon heat. Life continued as life does. With the momentum of the traffic, Temo rode through, half aware, unable to fully enter the world around him. Murals flashed by in fragments of color as storefronts dissolved into one another. Light broke against glass, chrome, and puddles left over from some earlier rain. His phone buzzed once in his pocket, then again. He did not check it. To look anywhere but forward felt impossible. A second of uncertainty was not something he could afford here. Could he afford it ever, he thought? Then he noticed the color. At first, it existed only at the edge of his vision. A blur of violet too strong to belong to concrete and traffic. Then another blooming purple tree. Then a line of them stretched down the avenue, impossible to ignore. Jacarandas. Temo slowed without meaning to. The bicycle coasted beneath him as branches bowed overhead in clouds of purple. Petals scattered across the pavement and gathered in the seams of the curb. They were beautiful and too early. The thought interrupted him. Too early. and still they bloom. He stared up at them as he rode, his chest tightening with uncertainty. Around him was beauty that carried with it the suggestion that something in the world's timing had slipped. A memory surfaced, or perhaps not a memory, but a line of thought waiting beneath the surface for the moment it would become useful. Something that he remembered reading somewhere. Truly, do we live on Earth? Not forever on Earth, only a little while here. Although it be jade, it will be broken. Although it be gold, it be crushed. Although it be quetzal feather, it is torn asunder. Not forever on Earth, only a little while here. He held these words somewhere deep inside and remembered a great poet before his time had once felt this way too. The blossoms overhead remained blossoms even if they had arrived too early. Their beauty did not become false because it appeared at the wrong time. Maybe that was all any of them were, a flowering before the end. By the time Chapultepec opened before him, evening had begun to settle into the city. The harsher edges of the day had softened. The air beneath the trees was cooler, touched by water shade, and the strange stillness parks could hold even while the city pressed against them on all sides. He dismounted at the edge of the path and let the bicycle roll beside him. The jacarandas continued here too, and then he saw it. The bench. Recognition moved through him immediately. As he recalled the events of that night months ago, he remembered everything. Yeretsi dragged toward the dark, murky waters, the voice in his head, and the impossible creature illuminated by moonlight. All of it hovered just at the edge of his awareness. The bench sat beneath the falling blossoms as though nothing had happened there. Temo set the bicycle aside and approached with the strange care people used around sites of private disaster. The city remained at the edges, softened here as if just for him, filtered through leaves and water and old stone. Then the air changed. Temo did not turn immediately. He knew. For a time, neither of them spoke. The jacaranda stirred overhead, petals loosening in soft spirals, catching in Ojin's hair on Temo's shoulder, in the cracks of the bench between them.
I thought I'd find you here.
Temo gave a small, tired breath of laugh, though there was no humor in it.
Yeah, yes you would. I needed to make sure this was real. And I'll be honest, this isn't helping. Have you noticed the flowers? They're early.
Ojin followed his gaze to the branches above them.
They are.
Temo rubbed his palms against his jeans, grounding himself in the roughness of the fabric.
I know that's not exactly profound. Flowers blooming early, big deal. But I keep looking at them and it feels like I don't know. Like the world is slipping and like everything is happening out of order. Like something is wrong in a way I can't explain to anybody without sounding insane.
You don't sound insane.
Temo let out a breath through his nose, sharper this time.
Don't I? Because I met a god last night, Ojin. Or whatever he is. He told me the world is ending, and somehow that's supposed to be my problem now, and I woke up feeling like I'd been split open. And I'm just supposed to keep going?
He looked down at his hands.
And the worst part is, I can't even tell what's crazier. That this is all real, or that so many are blissfully unaware.
Ojin did not interrupt him.
I keep thinking about what the coyote said. About change, about sacrifice, and well, about everything ending.
Temo shook his head faintly.
And then I look at this.
He gestured helplessly to the blossoms overhead. His words caught in his throat for a moment.
And it's beautiful. It feels wrong to find it beautiful, but it also feels wrong not to. And instead of just feeling afraid. I keep feeling like maybe it means something. Like maybe there's still a point to any of it. And that makes me feel like I'm going crazy.
Ojin could only watch him as the words flowed through him.
Listen to me. I sound pitiful. The world might be ending and I'm sitting here trying to make poetry out of trees because I don't know what else to do. What do I do?
Ojin turned then, fully, his expression gentler than Temo expected.
You're doing your best. You're trying to understand it. There is nothing mad about looking at a thing that frightens you and asking what it means. There's nothing foolish about feeling the end of something and still searching for what makes it worth loving while it's here.
Ojin glanced upward, where the purple branches bowed over them.
They're early, sure. That tells you something is out of balance. But they are still beautiful. Their beauty is not a lie because it arrived at the wrong time.
Temo teared up, but looked away before it could show too plainly.
I don't know how to hold both the terror of it and it's still wanting things. Still wanting there to be more. Still wanting.
He cut himself off. Ojin did not press.
That's what being alive is.
Temo laughed weakly.
That sounds too simple.
It isn't simple. It's only true. I'm afraid nothing that comes after this realization is simple to understand.
Timo stared at the petals scattered near their shoes, his voice almost a whisper now.
I think part of me feels stupid for hoping at all. If everything is really as bad as it seems, if things are ending, then what kind of person still reaches for beauty, for connection, for meaning?
The humankind. To hope while knowing how fragile things are is not stupidity. It is courage. And that is one of the few things that makes any of this bearable.
Timo searched his face as though trying to determine whether he truly believed what he was saying or whether this was only kindness offered to keep him from breaking open any further.
You really mean that?
Yes.
And I'm not.
He almost laughed at himself for how small his voice sounded.
I'm not losing my mind?
Ojin's answer came without hesitation.
No.
There was such certainty in it that Timo's breath caught.
You're seeing more than you did before. And while it's frightening, it is not madness.
For a while, neither of them spoke. Another petal landed on the bench between them. Timo became aware of how close Ojin was. The steadiness of his presence, the terrible relief of being understood by something that defied logic.
If things were different.
They're not.
Ojin said, though there was no harshness in it, just a certainty that they both needed to not delude themselves. That was when Timo's hand moved. For a moment, that was all it was. The light contact of fingers against fingers, tentative enough to deny if either of them chose to. But neither of them did. He looked at Ojin then, really looked at him, at the stillness in his face, at the weight he'd carried so carefully it almost disappeared. Timo moved first, but only barely. Ojin did not move away. If anything, he met him there. While the kiss was brief, the distance between them did not return to what it had been. Timo stayed close enough to feel Ojin's breath, his own becoming uneven now. Ojin's eyes searched his face as though checking for regret. There was none, only the stunned, quiet clarity that comes when something hoped for too carefully has finally happened, and the world impossibly has not split open for it. Ojin drew back first, though only enough to give the moment shape again.
We should go,
He said quietly.
Maybe not just yet.
What remains of Mictlan? Mictlan changed beyond recognition. What had once been a threshold had become a hollow where meaning thinned as divinity eroded, and gods could be reduced by time rather than battle. It was a place where things were kept too long, until whatever they had once been wore away. Tezcatlipoca stood among what remained of the gods. Around him lay forms that still suggested they were once divine a long time ago. He had brought them here, believing removal might preserve them, that if he carried them far enough from conquest, desecration, and the slow erasure of name and worship, they might endure. But Mictlan did not preserve anymore. Across the obsidian dark expanse, Huitzilopochtli still fought. Or rather, he still believed he was fighting. The god of war burned bright against the hollow. In another age, his presence alone would have altered the field around him. He had once been the spear point of empires, and as violent and brutal as the flames of the sun. But here, something about the fight felt wrong. Tezcatlipoca saw it before Huitzilopochtli did. At first it was only rhythm, pulsing in the darkness. Huitzilopochtli struck with perfect ferocity. Yet the Tzitzimime did not respond like enemies. They did not strike him, nor did they retreat in panic. They yielded just enough, opening space at the wrong moments, drawing him forward, letting him spend himself. He was arranged. Tzitzimime moved around Huitzilopochtli with an eerie patience of attendants preparing an altar. Every motion had design and careful precision. No force was wasted. Even their retreat seemed measured. As though the fight had already been shaped towards a conclusion only one side understood. They were not trying to stop him. They were hurting him. And Huitzpopalot had not yet moved. She watched from above the hollow, vast wings folded still as a monument. She had not entered the fight because she did not need to. Her daughters had already built it for her. Then Tezcatlipoca understood what she was feeding on, not blood or divinity alone. Hope burned in Huitzilopochtli every time he refused to fall. Faith lived in the old certainty that he was still what he had always been. Fear rippled beneath both. Tezcatlipoca and Huitzilopochtli was subtle first, then growing sharper as the logic of the fight began to turn against them. She was feeding on three things: faith, hope, and most importantly, fear. And of the three, Tezcatlipoca saw with growing horror which one she favored most. If Huitzpopalot fed most deeply on fear, then battle itself could become harvest. Every doomed act of resistance, if staged correctly, would strengthen her. Every god who met her head-on might nourish her more thoroughly than any coward ever could. Huitzilopochtli had not been chosen because he was the weakest. He had been chosen because his strength could ripen into fear. And the god of war looked succulent to her right now. Only then did Huitzpopalot move. Obsidian edges drank the little light Huitzilopochtli still cast. Around him, the Tzitzimime widened their circle, presenting him. At last, Huitzilopochtli seemed to understand. Even then, he remained himself. He did not beg. He did not hesitate. He struck at her with all the terrible majesty of a dying sun. What flashed in his eyes then was not despair. It ended with a burst, just as it had begun. And Huitzpopalot drank. Her wings opened around him. The movement was almost tender. A mockery of Tonantzan's embrace. The light dimmed, catching the little light left, and for a moment it looked like a stream of gold trickling down her jaw. The god of war was gone. The fifth sun was setting now. Tezcatlipoca did not move as the horror of what he witnessed consumed him. He was thinking too quickly now. The old strategic machinery turning beneath the grief. That was when Tezcatlipoca felt it gather in him. A refusal to call the absent dead without proof. He had a moment of realization. Coyote, Quetzalcoatl. If either remained beyond this hollow, then the ending had not yet fully completed itself. Perhaps the sun had not set yet. Huitzpopalot turned toward him, vast and patient in the dark, as if she could smell the shift in him. He stood among the remnants of those he had failed and made a choice. He decided, deliberately, not to collapse into certainty of doom. Her eyes locked onto his, expecting fear, but instead, he chose hope. The cave. Coyote descended the trap door barefoot, one hand trailing along the damp stone as he moved lower into the earth. The stairs spiraled beneath the den in a path that turned to jagged, uneven stones. Above him, the urban layered life faded into something distant and indistinct, swallowed by the wet hush of the stone engulfing him. The water dripped somewhere ahead in a slow, irregular rhythm. The air cooled, and the old shells at his ankles clicked softly in the dark. The chamber of Mictlan opened before him in dim obsidian vastness. The black water lay still. The torch at the threshold gutted weakly against the damp. The familiar meeting place remained where it had always been, the narrow margin between the living and the dead. The place where Charlotte had spoken 1,000 careful words to the messenger. Coyote remained at the edge of the divine, always listening, but moving in a world of mankind. Charlotte remained hidden in the border places of Mictlan, close enough to the threshold to feed information upwards, far enough from the hollow center to survive. One moved, one watched. And although earlier Coyote had been called here, no one had waited him.
Charlotte!
He called. No answer. His ears flicked back. Charlotte should have been waiting near the shoreline, as he always had been. He would often meet his empty eyes, glowing faintly in the half-dark with that eternal mixture of irritation and grief. He scanned the cavern again, squinting and straining against the darkness, fixating on every shadow.
Charlotte!
He called again, sharper this time. Still nothing. Then he saw something farther in, not near the shore where he should have been, but deeper into the cavern, where the obsidian dark widened into those uncanny reaches where light didn't dare exist. Darkness that pulled one inward like a black hole. A figure stood there, with the same vacant eyes, further into the cavern than usual. Something in the posture was wrong, though. The coyote's stomach turned with unease as his chest tightened and he began to feel watched, like prey. Then, from behind a low stone outcropping near the threshold, a muffled voice choked out.
Don't.
Coyote spun, trying desperately to find the source of the voice. It echoed strangely in the cavern, concealing the source. Again, rougher now, dragging itself through the pain.
Don't go further in.
He moved instantly. As he rounded the outcropping, he found Charlotte, half collapsed in the shadows, wounded and left for dead. At that moment, he heard a soft crunch emanating from the silhouette deeper in the cavern.
You should never have come. I tried to tell you. That wasn't me.
His voice had been flayed down to almost nothing. Each word seemed to cost him. Coyote stilled.
What? I didn't summon you.
Coyote stared at him, incredulously.
They didn't know about you, not for certain. They suspected you were here, watched for signs, but they didn't know you still lived until now.
Coyote felt the cold travel through him in a wave. He took a deep breath and studied the wounds covering Charlotte, and paused. They had tortured Charlotte until he gave them what mattered most. Coyote had done the one thing he should never have done. He answered the call. Charlotte's hand shot up and seized his wrist with what little strength remained.
They cannot take me.
Coyote looked down at him. At first he did not understand, or refused to.
Then we leave. I'll carry you.
Charlotte gave a faint, broken laugh.
You'll carry me.
Yes.
You always were sentimental at the worst possible time.
Coyote's jaw tightened.
Save your insults for when you're not dying.
I'm saving you time because I am dying.
Charlotte's grip tightened.
Listen to me.
Movement stirred in the distance, and low rattling came from within the dark. The creature Coyote had mistaken for Charlotte began to creep closer. Behind it, other forms gathered in the obsidian black. The trap was closing. Coyote glanced toward them, then back.
I can still get you out.
No,
You don't know that.
I do.
You've survived worse.
Not this.
Charlotte looked at him with those old, exhausted eyes.
If they take me, they know what I know. They take the way to Quetzalcoatl.
Huehuecoyot's face changed.
No, there has to be.
Another way? Oh, trust me, there isn't.
The cavern shuddered faintly around them. Charlotte's voice dropped.
You remember the old stories better than most.
Huehuecoyot looked away, guarding his expression from Charlotte.
Don't.
You remember Quetzalcoatl descending into Mictlan, gathering the bones, carrying them back so humanity could live again.
I know the story, but this isn't what was supposed to happen. I don't understand.
Then understand it now.
Huehuecoyot looked back at him, as Charlotte's light dimmed and his eyes remained fixed on him.
The sixth son will be born through someone finding Quetzalcoatl before the dark does, and he will know what to make of these bones. He will understand that what comes next is worth the sacrifice.
Charlotte's fingers dug into his wrist.
They cannot take me.
He said again, softer now.
You know what that means.
Huehuecoyot shook his head once.
No,
You do.
I can't.
You can.
Huehuecoyot's breath broke through his teeth.
Don't ask this of me.
I am not asking you.
For a moment, neither of them spoke. The black water shifted. Stone groaned overhead. The Tsitsi Mime crept closer through the dark. Charlotte's expression softened, just enough to hurt.
My bones. Take what you can. Make sure someone finds him. If you leave me to these beasts, everything I guarded dies with me. Don't let them make me into their path.
Huehuecoyot looked down at his own hand, still trapped in Charlotte's weakening grip. The coyote had been a coward in many ways, a liar and more, a fool whenever the world allowed it, or needed it of him. But this was not a trick he could slip free of. This was the old story turning beneath his feet. And Coyote knew better than anyone that one day all those stories would find their poetic conclusion. Once, Quetzalcoatl had carried the bones out of Mictlan so humanity could be born again. Now someone had to carry death upward to find Quetzalcoatl. And Charlotte was telling him, with the last of his life, that it had to be him that brought about this change. Huehuecoyot bowed his head.
I don't want to.
Charlotte's mouth twitched.
I know.
I can't lose another one of you.
At that, Charlotte's eyes changed. For one moment, the contempt left him. The old bitterness, the impatience, all of it fell away, and what remained was only grief answering grief.
You already have.
Charlotte said. The words broke something in him. Huehuecoyot shut his eyes. Charlotte squeezed his wrist once.
Do it before you suffer the same fate.
The false thing in the cavern shrieked, as other shrieks in the cavern answered. Its backup was here. Charlotte did not look away.
Be useful for once, Coyote.
Huehuecoyot leaned close, his forehead nearly touching Charlotte's.
I'm sorry.
Charlotte exhaled.
Don't be sorry.
His eyes held, steady to the end.
Make it matter.
Huehuecoyot brought his hand to Charlotte's throat. He hesitated. Charlotte did not flinch. That was almost the worst part. Then Huehuecoyot ended it cleanly. For a moment, nothing in Mictlan moved. Even the water seemed to hold itself still. Then Charlotte's body slacked beneath his hand, and something deep in the cavern shifted in silence. The threshold had lost its watcher. Huehuecoyot remained crouched over him, one hand still at his throat, unable to lift it away. Charlotte's blood slicked over his fingers and pooled in the lines of his palm. Behind them, the Tsitsi Mime began to shriek again, their echoes almost mocking. He had to move. He had to get back to Timo and seal this place while he could, before the creatures found their way upwards. It would buy him enough time. Not forgiveness. Time. He looked down at Charlotte's body, panicking as the shrieking grew closer. So Huehuecoyot did what Quetzalcoatl had once done for humanity. He gathered bones in Mictlan. He wrapped what he could in his own torn cloth, hands shaking so badly he had to stop once and forced breath back into his lungs. The bundle was small. How could something that carried so much knowledge become so little in his hands? The cavern cracked again. Black water surged against the shore. For one brief instant, grief threatened to drag him backward. Charlotte had been the last of that old shape of companionship he shared with the gods. Someone who remembered him before he'd been reduced to improvisation and survival. Then the ceiling began to fall. Coyote ran. The old shells at his ankles clattered against the stone with every step. Damp air dragged at his lungs. The city above felt impossibly far away, as though he were climbing toward a world that had already forgotten him. He held the bundle against his chest. Near the top of the stairs, he stopped with one hand against the wall and bowed forward. For a moment alone in the dark, he let himself grieve. Not loudly. Miktalan had swallowed enough voices. But his chest ached with it, and his heart strained against the brutality of what he had done, as if some buried, foolish part of him still believed grief could force the world to give something back. Charlotte was gone. Quetzalcoatl might still remain. And Tezcatlipoca. Could he? Did the coyote actually believe what his thoughts entertained? Could he be alive? Coyote had no proof, no certainty. But certainty had become the luxury of the doomed. So he chose hope, because it was the one thing left that did not already belong to the darkness that took everything from him. By the time he reached the office through the trapdoor, Charlotte's blood had dried in the creases of his hands. He set the bundle on the desk with a care that broke him all over again. For a moment, he only stood there, staring at it. The office looked obscene around it. The clutter, the receipts, the cheap lamp, the bottles, the little signs of ordinary business. All the human mess of keeping a place alive. And there, in the middle of it, wrapped in stained cloth, were the bones of a god. Coyote went to the sink, his tears swelled in his eyes. He scrubbed at his hands with a rag in cold water, but some of it stayed beneath the nails. He scrubbed harder. The skin reddened and his knuckles bled. Still the blood would not leave. When he looked up, he caught sight of himself in the dark office window and almost recoiled. He did not look human. Not yet. The transformation back had gone slower than he was used to. His face twisted oddly in its incompleteness. For 1 second he stared at the reflection and saw only what had come back from below. Not the host of this place. Not the charming fool everyone saw. A thing from the threshold. A horrible thing with blood on its hands. A thing that killed its friend and carried the bones upstairs. He gripped the edge of the sink as he heaved. Then, faint through the office window, he heard Ojin's motorbike turn into the street. Sound pulled him back to the world instantly. He went still and listened from his empty office. Temo's voice came first, low through the glass.
We shouldn't go in together.
Then Ojin.
I know.
You go in after. Just give it a minute.
You sure?
Temo let out the smallest breath of laughter.
No, but if Yaretsi sees us walk in like this, she's gonna know something happened.
For 1 second, Huehue Quixote nearly laughed. Oh, so that was why Temo missed work today. As if revelation, terror, destiny, and a world coming undone had not already been enough for him. Now there was the awkward logistics of tenderness. He chuckled once, and then with no warning his throat closed around grief again. Because it was sweet and fragile. Because 2 human beings were standing outside his building, trying to protect something soft for 1 minute longer in the middle of the horror they were both aware of. Huehue Quixote sank into the office chair and covered his mouth with one hand. And outside, Temo was still sweet enough to worry about hurting a friend while the end of the world circled around him like a vulture. Huibekyo caught a glance of his own reflection in the window then, and noticed humanity did not return to him like a mask being placed neatly over the divine. It came gradually. The ears withdrew first, folding themselves back into the fall of his dark hair. His mouth softened, the sharpness retreating from his teeth. The gold in his eyes dimmed, not extinguished, but veiled beneath the tired brow of Hector's face. He watched himself become human while he listened to humans. That was the cruelty and mercy this process showed him. Because suddenly Huibekyo understood, with painful clarity, what made him different from the others. He loved humans. He admired them. Their lives, their art, their curiosity, their impossibly stubborn need to make meaning where none existed. The way they reached for beauty and horror, for music and grief, for tenderness while their lives flashed by like sparks in the middle of nothing. Their briefness did not diminish them. It made them radiant. They had kept worshipping him without naming him. Every coyote sketched in a notebook margin. Every song about hunger, lust, change, survival. Every love letter written, torn apart and rewritten. Every joke told in a hospital room. Every hand reached for in the dark. Every act of mischief, invention, seduction, and improvisation. Every moment someone made art instead of surrendering. It all made sense now. They had carried him forward not as a god, but as an act of survival itself. Throughout time, humans reached towards Coyote, toward creativity, toward knowledge, toward the ecstatic impulse to make something out of terror. And this was the thing that had kept him from being devoured. That's why its papalot had not destroyed him yet. Not because he remained untouched by entropy, but because he had learned from humans how to remain alive inside it. He yearned for that. And it was that yearning that kept something in him beating still, like the drum they played in worship of him, whether they knew his name or not. The feeling was universal. Huibekyo looked down at his hands. The blood remained beneath the nails. The bones remained on the desk. Being human did not cleanse him. That was not what humanity meant. Humans were not precious because they were innocent. They were precious because they carried blood, grief, failure, longing, and still made something worth saving with their hands. He had thought becoming human again would hide the monster. Free Mezcal. Morning had already settled into the den, and Yaretsi was already there. Of course she was. She had opened the place, dealt with deliveries, checked the gear twice, cleaned what still needed cleaning, and moved through the early tasks of the day with clipped efficiency of someone working harder because it was preferable to admitting she was pissed off. When the front door opened, she looked up immediately. Temo entered first, body carrying a tiredness that made no sense for the hour. He looked as though he had not slept properly, and whatever softness still lingered in his face only made the exhaustion more obvious. For one suspended second, no one spoke. Yaretsi set down the rag in her hand.
Really?
Temo stopped just inside the door. Whatever explanation had been forming in him died the second he saw Yaretsi. There was nothing he could offer that would not sound evasive, and worse, nothing he could say that would actually make any of this normal.
I texted.
And then disappeared.
A few seconds later, Ojin entered behind him, quiet as ever and no less altered by whatever had happened since they had vanished. Yaretsi looked between them. Temo, pale and shaken. Ojin, too composed.
That was my fault.
Yaretsi gave a humorless little laugh.
Great. I love that there is this whole little thing here that I'm not part of. Very comforting.
Temo winced.
Yaretsi,
No,
She tossed the rag onto the bar.
I don't need a full confession before soundcheck, but I am getting very tired of everyone acting like I'm stupid.
The office door shifted softly behind the bar. All three of them turned. Coyote stepped out. He had washed the blood away. He composed his face, but grief still clung to him in subtler ways. And the stillness of him, the way his casual, careless ease had vanished, and the fact that for one strange instant, he looked less like Hector and more like a simulacrum of his persona. His eyes found Temo immediately. The room changed. Everyone could feel it. Temo stilled, and Ojin saw it. Yaretsi saw both of them reacting, and that was it. That was the last of her patience.
Oh my god.
Huehuekyo blinked. Good morning to you too.
No.
Yaretsi pointed at him, then at Temo, then Ojin.
No, absolutely not. I have been very cool about this. But you don't get to all stand here trading little haunted looks like I'm not in the room.
Temo looked stricken.
That's not what.
But it is exactly what this is.
Her voice lowered.
And I'm not an idiot. You have money you won't explain. You vanish. You walk out of your office like you just buried someone. So yeah, I have a feeling about what's going on.
The silence after was immediately suffocating, as Huehuekyo looked at her for a long moment. Then, very carefully, he said, Trust me, whatever you think is going on, it's weirder. Yaretsi stared at him. That was not comforting. Somehow it was worse.
Oh, then tell me.
After the show.
No.
Her gaze stayed on Huehuekyo.
No, not you, Temo. You.
Huehuekyo's expression shifted. For once, he did not joke fast enough to cover it. For a moment, Yaretsi could have sworn his shape faltered. Yaretsi swallowed but did not back down.
You tell me what is happening. After the show. You promise me.
Huehuekyo stood very still behind the bar, grief and exhaustion flickering beneath the borrowed face of Hector. Then he nodded. After the show, I promise. Yaretsi held his gaze a second longer.
Fine.
No one relaxed as the agreement hung in the air, shifting the balance of the room. The day passed and the den shifted towards evening. When Yaretsi finally stepped outside for a smoke, it was less about nicotine than escape. For a moment, the ritual worked. Then a voice carried through the dusk. So, does this mean you're open to the public? Yaretsi turned. Lorenzo stood a few paces away, polished and impossible to read. Charles lingered beside him, one shoulder cocked casually, expression much easier to read. And just behind them, almost swallowed by the bruised edge of the alley light, stood Carlotta, who said nothing. She only watched the den over Yaretsi's shoulder, her face calm, faintly expectant, as though she were listening to music no one had started playing yet. Yaretsi felt the small hairs along her arms lift. Then Charles smiled, and the moment loosened just enough to pretend it had not happened.
Oh, you made it.
We said we would.
Charles replied before Lorenzo could. He glanced toward the den with open appreciation.
I'm not saying I spent an embarrassing amount of time talking this place up after we left, but I'm not also saying I didn't.
Despite herself, she smiled.
Well, the show hasn't even started yet.
We know, Lorenzo said. Charles nodded.
I like being early. I have a few, trust issues with local reviews.
Yaretsi raised a brow. He lifted both hands.
No, seriously. Half the time, people either paid off, taste blind, or are trying to convince you some horrible little tourist trap is the real experience. And I'm not trying to spend the night in a place with clashing neon script on the wall and a cocktail called, like, Oaxaca Daddy.
Please never say Oaxaca Daddy to me again.
I'm doing my best here.
The smile stayed. Charles noticed and softened a little, enough to make the next part feel less like chatter and more like sincerity.
I mean it, though.
He said, glancing toward the den again.
This place, it feels alive. Most places people hype up are dead the second you walk through the door. This one actually has a pulse.
After the day she'd had, the line landed deeper than it should have.
You built that. You and your people. That matters.
Yoretsi took another drag, letting the smoke buy her a second. It was ridiculous how much she appreciated hearing that from someone outside the room. Not because his opinion should matter, because she had spent all day holding everything together while being treated like the one person not worth trusting. Charles seemed to catch something of that without fully understanding it.
I've been looking forward to tonight all day. No, not in a weird way, just in, I don't know. Feels like something real is happening in there, and I'm excited to be around it.
He laughed at himself lightly.
Which sounds intense when I say it out loud.
Yeah, a little.
Fair.
Lorenzo, who had said almost nothing, finally spoke. You've built something rare. Again, the sentence carried more weight than it should have. Behind them, Carlotta still had not spoken. She stood with her hands loosely folded in front of her, eyes fixed past Yoretsi and into the warm mouth of the bar. Not impatient, not eager, just waiting. But Charles had already done his work. The warning in Yoretsi's body had not vanished, but had softened around the edges. He glanced back toward the door.
Well, show is about to start. You guys should head in if you want to experience something rare or whatever.
Charles brightened.
See? I told you, we're early for all the right reasons.
That pulled one more unwilling smile from her. Then Charles and Lorenzo turned toward the door. Carlotta followed last. As she passed Yoretsi, she did not look at her. She only tilted her head slightly toward the den, as if acknowledging an invitation no one had given. Yoretsi watched her disappear inside. Then she crushed the cigarette beneath her heel and followed them back in. By the time the show started, the den had become a furnace of low light and sweat. The room pulsed as one body, boots striking sticky floorboards, shoulders knocking in rhythm, bodies packed tight beneath violet light and the smell of mezcal, perfume, damp brick and heat. The stage was too small for what the crowd wanted from it, which only made it more intense. At the back, Coyote did not stay to watch. He'd already hidden Charlotte's bones in the office. Nothing from below was going to touch them. Nothing from this side of the world was going to find them if he could help it. He did not trust himself in the open now. Not with grief still clinging to him. Not with the mask of Hector sitting so badly over what he really was. He couldn't bear it. Something was off. Something told him to stay behind closed doors. He slipped out from the office only long enough to move behind the bar, snatch a bottle of mezcal from beneath the counter, and pour a rough swallow into a chipped glass. He could feel the room without really looking at it. The music hit him in the ribs. For half a second, he almost stayed, drawn in like the rest of the crowd. Then he caught his reflection in the mirrored bottles behind the bar and saw how thin the disguise had become. It was taking so much effort to keep the mask up. No, that was it. He took the bottle, the glass, and vanished back into the office before anyone could call to him. Out front, the room gave itself over as the set continued and the crowd moved as one body now. Sweat bright and breathless beneath the violet light. The bass pressed to the floor. The mosh pit did not form all at once. Shoulders knocked. Someone laughed as they pushed back, and someone shoved back harder. A gap opened near the center and filled again, then opened wider with a pulse inside the pulse. Bodies turned around it, pulled by the beat and by each other. Rough but joyful. A storm everyone believed they had chosen. For a few precious minutes, it looked like what it always looked like. A room full of people consenting to intensity because music made them feel larger than fear. Then the three strangers began to move. Not against the crowd, with it. They glided through the crowd as the room's heat hid their coldness. Charles moved first, dancing a little even, as if he belonged there. Bright-eyed and flushed in the crush of the pit, he seemed to actually be enjoying himself. Carlotta followed the outer edge of the circle, elegant even in the sweat and impact. She moved forward, mirroring Charles. Lorenzo hung further back, calm and watchful, letting the others pull attention while he drifted toward the hallway that led to Coyote's office. People stumbled inward without knowing why. A shoulder here, a hand there, a body redirected by pressure disguised as dancing. The pit became tighter at the edges and emptier at the center, a living ring closing around prey. Ojin felt it first. His eye burned in his skull, sudden and hot. The note in his hands held for half a second too long. He shook the feeling off. Not now. Not when Yaretsi was this close to losing faith in him. Not when Temo kept looking at him like he could feel the wrongness moving through the room too. Across the stage, Yaretsi caught the change in him. The lights flickered. A cheer went up for it, because old venues were always half-haunted, and everyone liked pretending that was charm. As the pit moved faster, suddenly Charles had vanished into it, then appeared again closer to the center. Carlotta slid behind a group of bodies and came out on the other side without seeming to have pushed anyone at all. Lorenzo reached the hallway. Ojin's eye flared again. Then came a scream. A real one. Ripped out so hard it split the room open. The pit collapsed inward. For one instant, the crowd became a wall. Within that wall, something red opened. Ojin understood too late what his gift had been trying to tell him. The music died under the crush of noise. Shouts, boots, glass, someone yelling "move," as though naming the right action might make it possible. Temo ducked behind the drum kit and looked toward Ojin, as if he could stop the thing already happening. Yaretsi froze. Everything she had fought to build, everything she had defended all day with anger and stubbornness and wounded pride, began unwinding in front of her. Then a body flew towards the stage. Not stumbled, flew. Discarded with too much ease.
Down!
Ojin shouted. He lifted his base in front of him like a shield. The impact drove him backward as wood cracked and strings shrieked. Blood sprayed across the stage in a bright arc. For one suspended second, the room had no meaning. Then, Yaretsi saw him. Charles, the stranger she'd invited inside. The smiling man at the door. The charming one. The one who had spoken so politely about the den. Now the charm had come off. He was covered in blood. His face stretched into a grotesque parody of hunger. Whatever warmth he had performed was gone. What remained was appetite wearing the ruined shape of a man. He climbed onto the stage with frightening speed. Yaretsi backed away, but her foot caught in the stage wiring. She fell hard onto the blood-slick floorboards, her guitar still strapped across her body. Charles came toward her. She saw the blood on her hands and closed her eyes. For one impossibly long second, despair took her whole. Her life was over. Not just her life, no. She realized that now people had died because of her. She had invited the monster in and had not even understood the door was open. Then there was a howl. Something in her remembered. Yaretsi opened her eyes. A giant feathered wolf stood where death had been. Ojin had shifted between one breath and the next. He struck Charles with a massive paw, sending him flying toward the bar. The crack of wood under his weight silenced the room for less than a heartbeat. Then the screaming doubled. Where Temo and Yaretsi saw their guardian, Fear saw only a larger monster. Now there was something visible enough to blame. Temo grabbed Yaretsi's arm and hauled her behind the drum kit. Charles had already vanished into the chaos again, shaking off Ojin's attack with unnatural ease. The den became pandemonium. Bodies shoved for the exits, chairs overturned. Ojin scanned the room with canine eyes, trying to find Charles in the thinning crowd. The The stage groaned beneath his weight. He was too large for the space now, too powerful for a room full of people who could still be hurt by his saving them. Another body flew toward the drum kit. Hojin moved to intercept. That's when Carlotta emerged from the crowd. She no longer looked elegant, not even close. The fine edges of her face had sharpened into something ghoul-like and starved. Her hands were hooked. Her mouth was wet with blood. Hojin snapped at her, but the body struck him hard enough to throw him off balance. Carlotta slipped between him and the rest of the band. She slashed at his side. He twisted away and struck her before Charles could attack again, sending her crashing into the far wall. Charles struck again, slower than Carlotta, but more rabid, his broken body already knitting itself back together. Carlotta moved with colder precision, her confidence untouched, cutting at Hojin whenever he turned to face Charles. They could not beat him fairly, so they did not fight fairly. Temo saw it. And in that instant, Yaretsi saw it too. They looked at each other and understood something unspoken. Temo grabbed his snare drum by the stand and charged first. He swung it like a club into Charles's back. The drum dented with the force of the blow. Charles barely staggered. He turned, eyes boiling with unholy rage. Before he could move, Yaretsi brought her guitar down against the back of his head with everything she had. The instrument shattered in her hands. Charles was reeling as Temo and Yaretsi ran towards the bar to take cover.
I'm
Going to fucking kill you!
He shouted, blood gurgling in his injured mouth. But then Hojin seized the opening. His jaws closed around Charles with a sickening crack. Carlotta instantly retaliated. She lifted her hands as if guiding invisible threads. Blood rose from the floor in red beads, then hardened into darts. With a flick of her wrist, she sent them screaming through the air. Most buried themselves in Hojin's body. Others struck the bar, the stage, the walls, dissolving back into liquid almost as soon as they hit. Hojin howled in pain and released Charles. He lunged at Carlotta, recognizing the greater threat. Charles hit the floor in a mangled heap, then rose.
ouch.
His bones cracked back into place, his mouth split into something almost like laughter. He dashed towards the bar, over the blood-soaked floor, and crashed to the broken wood with unnatural force. Before Temo could move, Charles seized him by the throat and lifted him.
Oh,
Charles said, his voice no longer charming at all.
I'm really gonna enjoy getting the two of you. I'm gonna gut you like a pig on Easter Sunday.
Yaretsi went cold. Not Temo. Not him too. Not because of her. She reached for the nearest bottle and threw it with all the strength in her body. Mescal shattered across Charles's shoulder. He looked at the wet glass glittering on his clothes and laughed.
You stupid bitch. You thought that was gonna do anything to me?
Temo's hand was already in his pocket. His face had gone strangely calm. Not brave, certain, as if some part of him knew his time had not come yet. He flicked open his lighter and held the flame to Charles's soaked shoulder. Charles ignited. Fire tore over him. Too fast, too hungry. He dropped Temo and staggered backward, shrieking with the shock of pain he'd forgotten how to understand. He clawed at himself, stumbled toward the exit, lost his footing and fell hard against the floorboards. This time he did not get back up. Across the room, Hojin had Carlotta by the arm. His jaws locked around her, dragging her through the wreckage. She fought in silence now. All elegance burned down to rage, her free hand clawing at the floor. Then Lorenzo emerged from the hallway leading to the office. He moved fast. Lorenzo did not look at Charles, did not look at Carlotta. He moved for the exit, with the leader's cold decision already abandoning what could not be salvaged. Hojin released a growl from deep in his chest and moved to intercept him, but he slipped past his claws like smoke. Distraction was all Carlotta needed. She struck her own trapped arm with one decisive swing. The limb severed cleanly as Hojin's jaws snapped shut on dead weight. Carlotta staggered back, one hand clamped over the stump, her face twisted with hatred.
This isn't over, mutt.
She then fled after Lorenzo, gliding over the floor faster than pain should have allowed. Ojin lunged after them. Too late. The doors slammed open as the night took them, and the den sagged into the terrible silence catastrophe leaves behind. Ragged breathing somewhere beyond the smoke, glass settling, the thin ring in their ears after violence, making every sound seem both distant and too close. The place looked flayed open. Tables overturned, cables torn loose, bottles bleeding themselves out behind the bar. Near the edge of the wreckage, what remained of Charles lay burned black against the floorboards. One arm curled beneath him, fingers clawed into something no longer human. Carlotta and Lorenzo were gone. Ojin stood among it all, breathing hard, still in his not-well form. Blood darkened the fur at his shoulders, as feathers trembled along his spine. The red darts had left dark wounds through the thick animal hide of his. His golden eyes burned too bright in the failing violet light. And then he saw Temo. Temo had one hand at his throat where Charles had held him. He was breathing hard, face streaked with soot and blood, but alive. Ojin paused, then looked to Yoretsi. The terror of his form remained, but there was a tenderness there too. A wounded softness that had no place in the teeth and feathers and blood. He looked at her as he remembered the lake, as if he remembered carrying her back from the edge of death. As if he had never known how to ask for forgiveness for frightening her while saving her. Yoretsi looked back, taking in the sight. At the exhaustion in his posture and the restraint he held himself with, she looked at the way every line of his body still angled toward protection.
He saved us.
It came out in a shaky, low voice no one answered. So she said it again with more certainty.
He saved us.
Temo looked at her, startled by the sureness in it. Ojin's gaze flicked toward her, and for one suspended second something passed between the three of them that the wreckage could not touch. Then the office door scraped open. It was Hector. Behind him the door hung crooked. What stepped into the light wasn't Hector, though. It tried to look human, but failed. Wearing Hector's blouse and jewelry stood a creature. His upper body was still vaguely human-like, but his legs twisted in a strange, animalistic way. His face was beastly, yet still retaining some of Hector in a horrifying manner. At his side hung a small leather pouch. In one hand he carried a folded pelt, dark and weather-worn. Its edges worked with old thread and beads that caught the broken light. In the other, an undamaged bottle of mezcal. Coyote looked at the bottle and gave a ruined little laugh.
Well, of course you made it to the after party.
No one laughed. He stepped fully into the room, and the last of Hector fell away with each step. The easy charm, the little slouch, the grin that always arrived before the truth could. By the time he had reached Yoretsi, he looked like an upright coyote. Coyote reached the bar, glass crunching under his shoes, and set the bottle down.
I told you I would explain after the show.
The words landed strangely. Because yes, he had made a promise, and he was keeping it. She looked from Coyote to Ojin, then to Temo, one hand still near his bruised throat. Her face was pale beneath the blood and sweat.
You all knew?
No one answered quickly enough. That was answer enough. Her eyes sharpened with hurt.
All this time?
Timo looked down, and Ojin closed his eyes.
What are you?
I have told you, Coyote.
What are they?
Coyote did not answer right away.
What you saw tonight, it goes way back.
Yoretsi stared at him, his hands tightened around the bottle.
Despite what some may claim, the lands back then were never for the taking. But the people who insisted upon that back then didn't care. They invited themselves in with promises, crosses, contracts, titles, offers. Then they called theft a transaction. They called occupation salvation. They call hunger destiny and expect the eaten to be grateful. Those things tonight are not separate from that history. Long ago, they came here through blood. And these here, they are born from the same hunger. The same rot that teaches monsters to speak politely while they do the unspeakable. They always want you to welcome them. People normalize it. They learn to call their oppressors saviors, because the alternative was admitting the wound was still open, that the thing feeding from them had never stopped feeding.
So, what are you then? Where are the gods?
Coyote's face went still.
When the massacre began, when the old world was torn open, and beings like this rose from the blood and fear of it, the gods were fed on. So, the gods sought refuge, not knowing it would lead to their undoing. I asked myself that too, Yoretsi. Where are the gods?
He looked back toward the door Lorenzo had fled through.
I've been hiding in plain sight, but I've always known some things followed. Some things always follow hunger. They wanted what little remains of the gods, or anything that survived being buried.
The answer passed through her slowly. All day she had thought she was being left out of some human ugliness involving money. Maybe power. Well-dressed strangers and secrecy. Some ordinary betrayal dressed up in bad lies. The truth was stranger. Her eyes burned wet and furious.
You promised after the show.
She said, turning on Timo now. Timo looked up. There was no room left in him for another lie.
Yes,
Her face tightened.
So it's true?
He swallowed.
all of it.
The words seemed to take something out of her. Then anger rushed in to fill the space.
And you were going to tell me after what exactly? When would you have told me?
I was trying to protect you.
No,
The word hit hard.
don't do that. Don't make this noble. You were scared, but it's okay. I'm scared too. Why wouldn't you just tell me? You could have had me by your side this whole time.
Timo flinched, because she was right. Huebekio placed the glasses on the bar. Then he looked at Ojin and the pelt. For a moment neither of them spoke. Ojin still stood half transformed, half naked beneath the ruin of his own violence, caught between the animal that had saved them and the man who would have to live with the aftermath. Blood ran down his side. His breath came unevenly. He looked powerful, yes, but exposed in a way that made Timo's chest tighten.
This was not meant to stay folded away forever.
Huebekio said. For a moment, the monstrous shape in him seemed to resist. Not because it wanted to remain, because coming back meant being seen. Coming back meant accepting that he had wanted to be called home. Huebekio's voice dropped.
Come back, brother.
The pelt had been kept all this time, not discarded or forgotten, or treated as another relic too painful to touch. Slowly, Ojin bowed his head. Huebekio stepped closer and settled the pelt over his shoulders. The last of the Nawal shape loosened from him as his human form slowly came back. He stood trembling beneath the pelt, barefoot in the wreckage. Human after all. Huebekio had reached for him. The embrace was too long withheld to be graceful. Ojin gripped the back of Huebekio's torn shirt to his sun-forced and pressed his face into his shoulder. There was only the coyote and the brother he had failed, or thought he had failed, standing together in the wreckage of the one place they had tried to keep safe. When they parted, Huebekio kept one hand at the back of Ojin's neck.
Still with me?
Ojin's voice came out rough.
Always was.
Huebekio almost smiled.
Liar.
Ojin gave a broken laugh, barely there. It was enough. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Huebekio looked at the den reduced to this. He reached for the bottle.
I need you all to listen.
He said, clearing his throat, tapping a claw against the glass bottle as he uncorked the mezcal. The smell rose sharp and smoky into the blood-heavy air. He poured what remained into the 3 chipped glasses.
At the edge of collapse, there is always this moment, this unbearable pause where everyone wants to know whether the ending has already happened. Whether there is still a choice, whether hope is courage or just illusion.
He paused, unsure of how to say what came next.
I used to think gods decided that.
Temo's eyes lifted to meet Coyote's.
I was wrong. Humans do.
His gaze moved from Temo to Yuretsi, then to Ojin with a warm, wise smile.
Do you understand what you are? Brief, breakable, terrified, ridiculous. You spend half your lives pretending not to love things because loving them means they can be taken from you. And then, somehow, you love anyway. You find a reason to. You paint over walls that will be demolished. You dance in cities built on bones. You fall in love while the world is burning and call that foolish, when it is the only force I have ever truly felt could make a god small. What is coming does not feed on blood. It feeds on surrender, on the kind of fear that grows when people decide nothing can change. The kind that turns hope sour in the mouth. The kind that whispers, why bother?
His eyes burned brighter.
That is how the darkness wins. Not by killing everyone first, but by making everyone believe the future is already dead.
He looked to Yuretsi.
You asked if it was all true. Yes, it is. The old gods are real. The old wounds are real. The monsters are real. The thing beneath the world has opened its mouth, and it is hungry.
Then he looked back to Temo.
But so are we. We can survive this, but not by pretending the world isn't ending. Not by waiting for someone else to make the choice as we rot away, calling despair wisdom because it feels safer than trying.
He lifted the glass.
The 5th sun is setting. The 6th sun will not arrive because gods hand it down from the sky. It'll be made by choice, by sacrifice, by art, by rage, by love. By every living thing that refuses to be turned into food for fear. It will be made by you.
He held the glass between them.
So cheers,
He said.
to us, to the 6th sun.
No one moved at first. Then Yuretsi reached for one of the glasses. Her fingers shook. Ojin took the second. Temo took the third. Coyote lifted the bottle for himself, and they all took a sip. The mezcal burned down Temo's throat and settled in his chest like a small, defiant sun. Coyote lowered the bottle as his gaze sharpened. Then he reached for the leather pouch at his side. He held it carefully. More carefully than he had held the mezcal. More carefully than he held most things.
What is that?
Coyote placed the pouch in his hands.
What remains of Charlotte?
Temo stared at him blankly. Coyote's face tightened, the name costing him more than he wanted to show.
Quetzalcoatl's brother. An old god, a guide of souls. He walked with the dead when they crossed the darkness.
The room seemed to draw closer around the name. Temo looked down at the pouch. It was heavier than it should have been.
He can no longer walk that road himself. Now he will guide you toward the only chance life has left.
Temo's fingers tightened around the cord. Coyote reached next for something smaller, wrapped and sealed carefully. Shell and turquoise worked into the binding.
This is for Quetzalcoatl. Do not open it.
Temo took it with the same care, though his hands began to shake. Coyote held his gaze.
Will you answer the call?
The words seemed to hollow out the ruined room. Temo looked at the pouch in his hands, at the sealed gift meant for a god he did not know how to find, at the blood drying on the floor, at Charles burned into the boards, at Yuretsi, furious and afraid and still standing, at Ojin wrapped in the dark pelt, watching him with an expression that made the world feel unbearably fragile. His voice came out small.
What if I can't do this?
Then we are all having one last drink together here.
He set the bottle on the bar. The mezcal caught what little light remained.
Or you take the chance.
He said, and for the first time his voice almost broke.
You take the road. You help me prove the end wrong.
The thought came to him quietly. From somewhere beneath fear, the future was uncertain. That was the terror of it. But it could also be something else. A morning he had not seen yet. A song nobody had written. A world that might yet become kinder than the one that made them. The thought struck him with almost unbearable force. What if the future was not only the thing coming to devour them? What if it was also the thing waiting to be saved?
I'll go. I don't know if I believe in destiny. I don't know if I'm the right person.
His voice shook, but he did not look away.
But this world is the only one we have.
He looked down at the blood on his hands.
And it's not dead yet.
Coyote went very still.
The future could be terrible. I know that. I think everyone knows that now.
His fingers tightened around the pouch.
But if it isn't written yet, then maybe it could be something else too. Maybe that's the whole point. Maybe that makes it worth saving.
For a moment, Kiyote looked unable to speak. Pride swelled across his expression, and Yaretsi stepped forward.
I'm still mad at you.
Timo gave a broken little laugh.
And when you come back, we're talking about this properly, with a beer on the rooftop.
When, not if. The word nearly undid him. Timo nodded. Tears stung his eyes.
Okay,
Yaretsi pulled him into a fierce hug.
You come back.
I will. I promise.
When she let him go, Ojin was there. Neither of them knew what to do with the space between them now. Not after the bench, or after everything the world had become in a single night. Ojin lifted a hand and stopped just short of touching him. For one breath, they only stood there. And then Ojin engulfed Timo in a hug. Ojin's hands came up at last, touching the side of Timo's face with impossible care, as if gentleness had become the most dangerous thing left in the room.
Come back, please.
Quieter than Yaretsi had. Timo nodded. Kiyote reached into his coat and drew out something wrapped in cloth. He unfolded it on the bar. A dagger lay against the stained wood, rough, improvised, held together in a way that made it feel almost violent. The handle had been shaped from bone, bound in dark thread and leather. At the end, an obsidian blade had been fixed into place, jagged where it had shattered. One black edge catching the violet light. Ojin went still.
Is that?
Yes,
Ojin's face changed before he could hide it.
I made it from what was left.
Timo looked at the bone handle, the broken obsidian, the blood-dark thread. Then at Kiyote. He wrapped the blade again, just enough to keep it from cutting too soon, and held it out. His hand shook, but he took the dagger. The moment his fingers closed around it, something opened. Kiyote's face broke, just slightly. Then he pulled Timo into an embrace. Timo clutched him back. The pouch of bones pressed between them. The sealed gift for Quetzalcoatl warmed against his palm. The dagger rested cold and heavy in his grip. Kiyote bent his head close to Timo's ear.
Find him. Find his brother. Bring him back to the world.
Timo closed his eyes. The den fell away. Like the world had been a curtain all along, and someone had finally pulled it aside. For one impossible breath, he felt everything at once. Yaretsi reaching toward him. Ojin half stepping forward. Kiyote's arms around him, holding him as if holding on could still change what had to happen. Timo gasped and opened his eyes and found himself somewhere far from anyone.
The Sixth Sun is a production by Coyote Studio. It is written and produced by Coyote Studio, and we are proud to announce that we are working with Viva Calavera to bring this series to life as an animation. When this episode airs for the first time on June 28th, 2026, our Kickstarter for our project will be live. If you want to see an anime of the story by a Mexican 2D animation studio, please check out our description to learn more. Your love for this independent series has helped us achieve so much already, and thank you for always listening and for being here. We would like to thank those who have made this project possible, with Hans Potter as our narrator, Coyote and Lorenzo, Jamal Kuykendall as Ojin and Charlotte, Ross Lee as Temo, Atticus Cohen-Yell as Charles, Indy Walter or Capita Mortua as an artist who has contributed so much more than just the voice lines of Carlotta to the series. This artist is behind some of the most amazing pieces of work, and, well, you've definitely seen them if you're watching our YouTube version. Music by Rich O'Coin, by Rookie, and by Liv Kurt. And, of course, written by me and with the voice of Yeretsi. I would also like to thank our community for the incredible support during these very difficult times, because I lost my eye this year, and a week after recording this episode, my cat Lucy passed away. Aside from all of the incredible fan art that we already receive, we also got a lot of beautiful art pieces from our community to heal during a difficult time. You guys are not just listeners, you are an incredibly kind group of people who have shown how much love can be behind a project. Not just from its creators, but from the whole community around it as well. So thank you for believing in us, for standing by us in difficult times, and for creating and for dreaming with us. Come join our community, be a part of our Discord, be involved in the creative space that celebrates art and whimsy, and as always, we will see you soon. While celebrating Aztec mythology, the Sixth Sun also wishes to acknowledge that we have recorded and produced these episodes on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Coast Salish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Thank you for your support on this project. It means a lot.